So what is the most important factor when it comes to consistency? Meaning, if I boiled it all down to what has helped me consistently take action in my business, with my family, and with my health, after being Mr. Inconsistent for decades, what would I say? Well, it all actually started with a book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. I remember reading this book because of my first personal growth book that I was recommended after first starting my business. Now, what I learned on the pages was awesome, but it's what I experienced afterwards that made the biggest difference for me. You see, I found a way to tailor what he taught me to my own personality, which also allowed me to start tailoring it to my clients and help them going from being inconsistent to consistent fast. Today, I want to share some of the most powerful quotes from the book and how I discovered my own way of being consistent so you can find your way too. If you're ready to do that with us, let's go. It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing. Turn on notifications and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go.
All right, so can you briefly describe what the compound effect is and really how it works?
Okay, so Darren Hardy says this in his book, and he says, it's not the big things that add up in the end. It's the hundreds, thousands, or millions of little things that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. So it's about those little micro moments that happen that add up in the end. It's not about something huge happening. And I think that people will get caught up in that. They're kind of like they're waiting for their big break or waiting for that thing to come that's going to change everything for them. But in reality, it's all about habits. And the way that you move consistently towards your goals is by those small habits and by those little things that you do every single day. And those are the things that are kind of seemingly insignificant, but they're the most important.
Yeah, I also love what he says about like the choices that you make, because sometimes the choices don't seem like they make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
But it's the small choices that you make. Like you said, the small actions, the small habits, right? And those are the things that build up to your success. One of the things that I kind of have discovered that my brain does, and I've noticed that it does it to a lot of other people too, is like you said, it convinces us that there's going to be one big thing, one big moment, one big opportunity. And we don't realize it's not like that. Like our brain is actually trying to get us to be inconsistent, saying that we need to focus all our time and attention on when that one big thing happens. But the truth is when you're doing things over time, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Darren Hardy says in terms of luck, your version of luck, but really it's those small things that prepare you for when those opportunities present themselves. Because if you hadn't been doing those small things, you wouldn't have even been able to have that opportunity to do that big one.
So I want to ask you this. How can entrepreneurs apply this principle of the compound effect to grow their business consistently?
So going back to the first thing that we talked about, it not being the big things, it being the small things. So what I like to do for the people who are in our programs is I like to ask them, like, what are the most important activities that they do that produces the most results in their business? It's the same thing that we do when it comes to like the connection with the family, right? If you're thinking about, I want to connect really deeply with my family, it's not that one vacation you do. It's all the small things, seemingly insignificant things that you don't think really add up that really do add up. And so what I do is I try to identify what those activities are, the small actions that actually build up into, like he says, the compound effect, what you truly want to be able to accomplish. And when we can think about things logically like that, and think about it in our business in terms of those small things that move the needle forward, it gets us to put action into the right activities. And when we do that, we produce more results. And it has that compounding effect. It's just our brain wants to convince us not to do those things because most of the time, those little ones, they're a little bit difficult or they're a little bit challenging or you're a little bit lack of confidence. You're not sure if you should do this. But those are the things that really move the needle forward the most.
One thing I want to add to this is decision-making. So when it comes to your business and thinking about the compound effect when it comes to decision-making. So there's this adage, this old adage about which one would you choose? Would you choose having $1 million today Or would you choose having a penny today and having it double for the next 30 days? At the end of those 30 days, you're going to have $10 million if you go with a penny. So that is kind of how you think about it. Those seemingly insignificant, small changes or choices or habits that you do every single day that are going to add up. So you stop looking at the shiny objects and you start looking at what you can do today and do it consistently over time, which is going to get you like those massive results in the end.
Yeah, as you're saying that, like it actually brought up at this other point of the whole be, do, have process that we talk about when it comes to life and performance coaching. And that is like those small actions that you're taking every day actually build into and become a part of you.
Yes.
Right. And so it's not something after a while that you even have to think about. It just happens automatically. When you do that, when you think about the daily actions that you're taking, you're actually putting a vote for the type of identity of the person that you want to become. And by default, you start to become that person. And so when you start to experience that, where it's just an everyday thing, like for me, when I was 100 pounds overweight, I had to try and convince myself to not hit snooze. And then I had to convince myself to go work out. Then I had to convince myself to keep doing that every day. And what happened is I started to build in those little micro moments, right? Where it was like, I wasn't hitting snooze. I was thinking about the impact this is going to make, right? And then I would get up and I would do my workout. I would think about like, I'm exhausted now, but it's going to make me even stronger tomorrow. And when I started to do that, I just became the type of person who I wake up now. And if I don't work out, you know I'm grouchy and you're like, hey, can you go work out? And it's because now it's a part of my persona and my identity, right? And it's those small things that give us the opportunity to do that. I always think about like the lottery winners, right? Winning $1 million versus working through the things, the strategies, becoming a different person to become the type of person who can make $1 million.
And keep it.
Now you get to keep it. Now you get to keep doing it over and over and over again. You can lose $1 million, but you'd be able to do it again because you now have become that type of person because you've learned those skills.
Yes.
Now, the next question is, how can the principles of the compound effect help entrepreneurs balance their business growth with family time? And he has a really powerful quote in the book that I'd like you to grab.
Yeah, I love this quote. So forget about willpower. It's time for why power. Your choices are only meaningful when you connect them to your desires and dreams. The wisest, most motivating choices are the ones aligned which you identify as your purpose, your core self, and your highest values. You've got to want something and know why you want it, or you'll end up giving up too easily.
I love it. I love it. So what does that mean to you?
So it means that just what you were saying, becoming the person who does those things, who wakes up in the morning, who, sends those messages or who does those things in their business by default, because you've done it so many times consistently. And it changes your identity so that you can move on to bigger and better things. So it's kind of like you're just going through these different levels of growth by using the compound effect.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And he even talks about like a little bit around like finding your why you're doing that thing, right? And a lot of people, like, for example, like when it comes to losing weight, they want to know like how I lost weight, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what are the actions that you took? And they didn't like ask me like, who did I have to become in order to do that?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I realized, and this is like the main thing that I really would tap into when it comes to being consistent, reminding yourself of why you want to be consistent and what is that going to help do for you that isn't possible right now. Because that why power, reminding yourself of what you're fighting for every day and how by you taking this action is going to make those things possible for you, for your family, and for the world, remind you of what you're doing this for. It's very easy to lose track of that. A lot of times our brain will get us into thinking about like how uncomfortable it makes us feel right now, or we just want to sleep in, or we deserve this or deserve that. And we lose track from the mission. When we're able to like really solidify of what the mission is and why this is so important and meaningful, it helps us get through those difficult times when maybe we don't feel like doing that.
Yeah. And many people's whys are their family, right? So this is when you start to think about, okay, what is it that I need to do, and have that focus on your family and what that's going to do for you and your family.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good, important thing here. And it's not everybody is focused around family, but our team is focused around family. That's why we're modern leaders here, right? We're not just about making a huge impact in the world and leading and growing our business. We're also wanting to create those connections at home, which is why it's important to find a team that resonates with you. So if you're not about family, that's cool. We're definitely not the team for you, but being able to find that will help you also be more consistent.
So what are some small, consistent actions that entrepreneurs can take to ensure that they are present for their families while growing their businesses?
Yeah, really, really great question. Because like I was saying before, like we don't want to just grow a business. We want to grow a business that also helps us create deeper connections with our family, right? And so it's the same thing that we do related to business. What moves the needle the most? Ask yourself, what are those actions you want to take? Is the same thing we would say when it comes to like connecting with your family. What are the small things that you do every single day that actually prove to your family that you love them, that get you to show up in a way that you want to show up for them, right? I notice for us, it's not sitting in front of the TV and just watching like 6 or 7 hours of like TV. It can just be us playing a video game. Like yesterday, we were playing like this game, a Starfighter game, right? And my son and I were playing, and Teresa and Alyssa were just watching us. And it's a different connecting piece because we're all having conversations about it. Everybody's making fun of us when we die, all these kind of things. But it creates deeper connection when we're doing those things, or playing a board game, or going out on a walk. And it's those things which seem insignificant, but they move the needle forward the most. And so it's just making sure that as intentional that you are with your business, you're just as intentional with your family time and with your health, which is what we try to do here on the channel. So I'm curious for you, how does the compound effect apply to maintaining and improving your physical and mental health? I know we kind of talk about business, talk about family, love to talk about like your physical health.
Yeah. And this has been one of my biggest transformations, because I was not the type of person who would work out consistently. And I definitely was not the person who would wake up early to do anything. I was never a morning person, but I made that my identity. So I had to switch my identity when I wanted to become that morning person, when I wanted to work out consistently, when I wanted to eat healthy. So I started making small changes. And at first it was, I would get up 30 minutes earlier, and then it got a little bit further, and it just became something where it's not a big deal anymore. I used to wake up a little bit earlier when I was working full time, because I had a little bit more time in the morning if I did that, so that I can kind of get things done and get my workouts in and prepare my lunches. But I still do that now, even though I haven't worked at a full-time job for over 7 years. So you just become that person. With the compound effect, you just become the person who does the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, I really love that. And what Teresa's not telling you is that everybody needs to be a morning person. It's finding the small things that you can do every day that will help you show up the way that you want to, right? So for her, it was waking up a little bit earlier, reading, doing all of the things that she found that really fuels her. But it's an individual process here. We see a lot of videos, and we probably put out some too, about like the best morning routine, the best workout routine, and the best whatever. But finding your compound effect has to do with you, your strengths, what you love doing, what you're passionate about doing, and then just tapping into that, knowing that it could be something else entirely different than everyone else. That's okay. It's just finding your way to tap into it. So as people read this book, and it's kind of funny because like I was reading this book and I've read it multiple times, I see it through a different lens now, because a lot of people think that exactly the way he describes it is how they have to do it. That's not the part of it. The most important part is like finding your way that leads you down the path of becoming the person that you want to become. And it does speed up the results as long as you're not trying to be like everyone else. You're leaning into your own personal strengths.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Now, some of the daily habits, because there's the next question is like, can you give us an example of daily habits to improve your health benefits for busy entrepreneurs? I want to give a few different ideas of some things that I've found that work for me, but also work for a lot of my clients. And really what it's about when it comes to health and physical and mental health is I like to ask my clients, like, what provides you with more energy? What helps you show up with more energy the way that you want to show up? And whenever I ask them these questions, they have something related to doing some type of movement, whether it's workout, walking, swimming, doing something that gets their blood flowing. Then they also talk about like having a space for like a mental reset, giving them some time, whether it's some do meditation, some go out on a walk. I know that's what I do. Some give themselves like a free day where they're not doing anything, or they're playing video games, another thing that I like to do, right? But they figure out like how to give themselves that mental space so they're not constantly working or constantly wanting to improve. They actually have a space to be able to download new answers. I remember I was talking on a call recently, is like when you're constantly doing, you're not open to finding any new ways because you're just constantly throwing more work at things. So instead, being able to give yourself some downtime gives you the ability of finding ways of getting more done in less time. In order to perform like an athlete, you have to rest and recover like an athlete. So one of the things that, like, if you look at a professional athlete, and I got a couple professional athletes in my life, just like how they work out, they also have equal amounts of time of rest and sleep and recovery. You'd be amazed at how long they sleep. You'd be amazed at how many days off that they actually have. Yes, you see them in the gym and you see them working super hard for a long period of time, which I really do believe is a lot of entrepreneurs. We're like constantly working, especially when we're working a full-time job, coming home, being an entrepreneur, trying to get our health and fitness and our family and all that kind of stuff. We've got to realize that if we want to perform like an athlete, which is really what we're doing, we have to rest and recover like one. So finding ways to rest and recover, to generate that energy, whether it's healthy eating, drinking more water, exercising, finding your way of doing that is going to help you become more consistent in your health and fitness. And that's the one thing that we found. When we're more consistent in our health and fitness, everything else follows suit.
Yeah.
I mean, in the beginning, I wasn't consistent with business, but when I started to get consistent with my health and fitness, and I knew that I could do that in other areas, it literally transformed those other areas because I had more energy and I had more things that I could give in that time frame because I was taking care of myself. So I want to ask you this next question. He also has a powerful quote around this. And that is, what are some common challenges that people face when trying to implement the compound effect, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, so he says that the first step towards change is awareness. If you want to get from where you are to where you want to be, you have to start by becoming aware of the choices that lead you away from your desired destination. So I kind of mentioned this earlier, right? It's kind of like those choices that you make, those small choices that you make, and it's really becoming aware of where they're taking you. So if you start to see that the actions that you're taking, even if, it's the compound effect, because the compound effect can still take you in the wrong direction. So becoming aware of those choices and where they're taking you is super important.
Yeah. And one of the questions we get a lot in our groups is like, how do I become more aware of when I'm going down the wrong path and being able to reframe and reflect on that, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I like to remind people of is that when you are reflecting and taking a look at maybe some of the activities that you want to do and you see yourself going down the other path of not taking those actions or convincing yourself not to, it's never a good thing to shame or guilt yourself. Instead, just look at the evidence. What is it pointing to? Like, why is your brain trying to connect you down that path? Why is it trying to get you to take those actions instead of these other ones? Obviously, being around somebody who is a coach, somebody who can mentor you, somebody who can ask you some questions, or a team like we have in our inner circle is really powerful because other people can give you some ideas, because sometimes we can't actually coach ourselves through it because we have our own filters of limiting beliefs. But when you see that stuff coming up, you can really understand, oh, that's just what my brain is doing to kind of keep me safe, to keep me stuck, or to keep me in this area. Because if I get past this, what's going to happen if I do find people? What if I do find somebody and somebody says yes to buy my program? Like, what do I do next? And that's just like this all fear mechanism that kind of like comes up. But when you're having that awareness, you now, from a perspective of like, oh, so I know why I'm doing that. You now have the ability of going down a different path if you choose. But you first have to become aware of it. And that means not associating yourself with it. It's just something you did or didn't do. It doesn't mean anything about your potential, but it is trying to teach you something. Lean in and try to learn that lesson. So I want to ask you this other question, sort of related to that. And that is like, how can entrepreneurs stay motivated to maintain their consistency, especially when results are not immediately visible?
Yeah, so he has this quote in the book as well. He says, seek out positive people who have achieved the success you want to create in your own life. Remember the adage, never ask advice of someone with whom you wouldn't want to trade places. So surrounding yourself with people who have had success, like a success leaves clues, right? So being around those people, you're actually going to start to take on those actions as well, and which will also help you with the compound effect.
100%. And like being in that situation, this has happened a lot to us when we're on like with one-on-one clients, is they don't even realize that we went through that exact same thing too. Like they went through this specific situation, or they were struggling with taking this kind of action, and they think there's like something wrong with them, or nobody else like knows what it feels like to be through this. And then when we're like, oh, that happened to us too. Like that's a part of the process of this, right? It empowers them to go, oh, so as long as I keep going and I learn the lesson, it's not just keep going, right? Mm-hmm. Not just keep going, but learn the lesson it's trying to teach you. I'm going to be able to create this level of success as well, as long as I'm consistently taking the right actions, right? And it's like that aha moment that you would have never had. Sometimes people think like, oh, this must mean that it's not possible for me to have success. What you don't realize is that everybody else who was in this road took this path, right? They decided they were going to actually go on the right side, not the left side, the right side, so they can lean into it and actually get this thing to teach them something. Those were the ones who became successful. And everybody else who thought that this just meant that there's something bound to not work for them actually went down that path too. And it's not that you experience that thing, it's what you do afterwards that counts, right? So one of these things that I talked about earlier is like this whole idea and philosophy of getting lucky. And I want to read this formula that Darren Hardy talks about, because I really do believe there's luck, but how he describes it is exactly how I believe that luck happens. Because have you ever seen this where somebody else just seems to take off? It seems like everything's working for them. And you're like, what in the world? Like, they're doing this thing. I've been doing it longer than them. All of these kind of like thoughts come up about like, maybe you're not good enough. So this is what he describes as luck. He says the complete formula for getting lucky is, number 1, preparation, which he says is personal growth. Number 2 is attitude. That is your belief and your mindset. Number 3 is opportunity, meaning a good thing does come your way. But number 4 is action, doing something about it. He says that is what equals luck. So personal growth plus belief and mindset plus a good opportunity coming your way and the action that you take to actually do something with it, that is what creates luck. And I've seen it happen time and time again. Mm-hmm. It's like when you think about the big things, there are going to be big things that come up, but are you prepared? Because are you doing the small things, the insignificant, seemingly insignificant things that are actually getting you to the point where when it comes up, you're going to be the perfect person to be able to do that? Or are you convincing yourself that you're not good enough, that it's going to happen and it's just going to happen all of a sudden and it's just going to be the perfect thing, right? That's not how luck works. You have to create your own luck. And how you do that is by tapping into the compound effect, taking those small actions and setting yourself up for success for when that opportunity presents itself. There's been quite a few opportunities that have presented itself this year specifically for me to be able to help connect with more people, connect with more masterminds, teach inside of other people's programs. And that would never would have happened if I hadn't done the small things like having just do a YouTube video once a week, right? Doing a short, doing a small training here, a small training there. All of those things for the last 13 years, 12 years, actually 12 and a half years, have built up into having these opportunities present themselves and me being ready for them. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of times where I convince myself not. I convince myself to go down the other path. But really understanding that this is how success works. It's those small things that you can do that are just specific to you and your strengths and the things that you do better than anyone else. That's truly what will help you create that compound effect when the opportunity presents itself. But you have to be willing to put in the work beforehand so that when it happens, you are ready. Now, here's the thing. I know a lot of people get to this point. They're like, well, how can I make sure that I track the things that I'm doing? What's working? What's not working? And this is something that we do inside of our programs, specifically in terms of a success pod that we have. So when it comes to like thinking about the activities for you to take action on, I was kind of referring to this a little bit earlier. Just taking action is step 1. Step 2 is figuring out a way to reflect on, is that the right action or should you take a different action instead? Because if you're trying to force it, trying to follow what everybody else is doing, I got to tell you, that's going to be extremely frustrating when you don't have the results that they have, because they all have different strengths and different weaknesses than you. So finding a way of reflecting, right? For us, we actually do this inside of our success pod where we ask very powerful questions to find out what are some things that are working exceptionally well and what are some things that you would do differently if you were to do this week all over again. And there's a number of different questions that we can ask to really pull that out. So if that's something you ever are interested in, please don't hesitate to reach out. We do have 1 or 2 success pod openings right now, but we also have the inner circle here on YouTube. So no matter where you are, if you're looking for the right activities, just reach out to us. I'll leave you the link below so you can fill out a short survey so we can really help identify what are the actions for you to take and help you take that consistent action. Just remember that it's not about being consistent. It's being consistent in what you need to be consistent in. So know this is a personal journey, something that we want to help you find those activities that are going to help move the needle the most for you. And they may be different activities than the things that everybody else says. Just be you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to fight this fight and keep leading from the front.